I would like to begin by thanking everyone for the support since the last video. Lots of great ideas and criticism, and it's because of this encouragement and motivation that I can now present this improved 3x3. But before we start getting into how this turns, I would like to talk about a couple of things. The first, Oscar van Deventer made a cube like this back in 2012 after a suggestion by Jens the Renders. So I was not the completely first one, though I did discover this mechanism independently. He called his cube the handicube, but I believe a 2x2 core is a more descriptive name and simply overall better, so I'll be using it instead of handicube moving forward, but simply to get everything straight with the credit and so on, that I should not be considered the initial inventor in that sense. Now, one of the concerns that people had was in regards to the friction and speed of the cube, and I would like to just talk about an aspect here. So to begin with, the effect with the free moving slice is not necessarily a matter of friction, but more better described as a matter of force, as the magnets play a role here. But still, the speed of a cube is largely dependent on the friction, what kind of tube is used, and magnet versus spring and so on. Now, on a standard cube, let's say that we want to get this to our perfect speed. So the amount of friction and the speed, let's say, just has the amount 1. So we want our left layer here, which is equal to the friction B here. So this is between the friction here between our middle and left layer. So we can say that the speed of the left layer is the same as the friction here, B, which in our case is it's the optimal speed, where it's as fast as possible while still being controllable. It's at 1. And now due to symmetry, you move around the lube and you don't really want different settings on different sides. We also get that our right side here is equal to C, also equal to 1. And now the middle slice, well, it's dependent on the friction from both B and C. So our M here is equal to B plus C, which is thus equal to 2. We can't really do much about it. If we lower the friction and increase the speed, we would get uncontrollable layers here. But on the 2x2 core, where we can adjust this friction A, we can instead say, let's say that here that the middle slice, the optimal speed here is also 1. So therefore, B and C, if we set this to 0.5, in other words, B plus C, which is the speed of the middle slice, is 1. Then with L here being equal to A plus B, we can actually solve this equation and get that A is simply and this should be equal to 1 here. This means that A is equal to 0.5 as well. And now all of these layers, our right side and left side and middle slice, are all equal to 1. Our optimal speed, that is the perfectly controllable one that we want. So for CFOP, this doesn't really matter, but for something like Roux or Streamline, where you do quite a lot more inner slice moves, this can matter quite a lot for the overall speed of the puzzle. So in other words, this mechanism can be used to achieve a bit faster cube, even though all the pieces and such does lead to some friction. Well, we'll simply have to handle it with lube and setting it up properly. But with that out of the way, let's look at how this performs. So this is a GAN 251M Leap, which I have modified and then built an outer shell that I have 3D printed in order to create this. And I did cheat a little. I increased the coolness by a factor of at least 10 by using authentic cubes with stickers from over a decade ago. But let's look at the corner cutting. It should be around about here. It works fairly well. It varies a little bit because of the 3D printed pieces, but most importantly, it doesn't seem to vary because of the 2x2 core itself. So the 2x2 core is, by itself constructed like a 3x3 with an anchor corner, but this does not seem to affect the performance and feeling of the cube. It reverse corner cuts as well a bit, but it can catch a little bit. So a lot of the issues with the cube relate to the 3D printed pieces, because as you might be able to see, they do sometimes catch and some lockups do happen, but a lot of the cases I have found has been related to cases where had the geometry of the puzzle is not what is stopping it. So here, if I try to do this reverse corner cutting, we can see that the sides here, the curves and everything should move, but the pieces simply get stuck on each other due to the high amount of friction, which overall slows it down a bit. The pieces are also quite heavy. Overall, the cube is about 111 grams, which is a bit too much. I was not really able to solve this with one hand, but it is good enough to be solved with 2 hands. So, and I will talk a bit more about these various aspects later and do a disassembly. But just solving this cube with 2 hands, and of course the free moving slice effect sort of works, just not super consistently, not as consistently as my previous prototype, where this was not really much of a question. But this also means that it is very much possible to make one that achieves this consistently. So using this is obviously a bit weird. It feels like you're kind of working with a big frame of the cube, and then when you get to the end of a Roux solve with LSE and such, you have like a very stable foundation, so to speak. And overall it's a pretty nice feeling, though one issue that can happen is because the pieces are quite heavy. When you try to do like middle slice, they get a lot of momentum, and so you start the move with the flick, and then it continues. And the point of the magnets here is to catch it, but if the pieces are too heavy, they will overshoot a bit because of the momentum, and you can, you know, get stronger magnet, but that isn't so nice, and doesn't work well with the free moving slice feature, and also increases weight by itself, so to speak. But I don't consider this to be that big of an issue, because that's something a mass-produced cube would solve very easily. And if you solve this, like if you just move the outer layers, you don't actually notice the 2x2 core. You can't really tell that there is a different mechanism here. Now the great part really is that you don't really notice where the anchor corner of the 2x2 core is, which one of the more important things for me to find out here, that is there something that happens due to the inherent geometry of this mechanism, but that's not a problem. And similarly, as I said, corner cutting is the only differences that happen are due to the imperfections from 3D printing the pieces, rather than the concept of the 2x2 core by itself. So overall, I would say that this is a massive success. There are some issues with catching and lockups. Haven't really had issues with popping, but while of course this isn't good enough that I would say that this is just overall better than a modern speed cube, the feeling of using this when solving Rue is great. The outer layers get the effect of the corner core magnets of the GAD, but the middle slices are only affected by the corner edge magnets, which is really great. But I would say it's kind of like, imagine going back in time to before magnets were added to speed cubes, and you know, you're sitting there with your Diane Shanxi, and you're handed a modern Moyu or GAN cube, and except it has a bunch of heavy lube and really tight settings on it. Now obviously you won't be able to perform as well with it than your Shanxi, but you will still be able to tell with the magnets and everything that, okay, this is the future, you know, this is really cool. And that's kind of how this is. That like, yes, sure, it isn't as fast as the standard 3x3, but the feeling of using of the frame and everything is just incredible. And it is something, because it's so different on like a fundamental level, it's also kind of fundamentally better than other 3x3. So I believe if a mass-produced version of this were to come out, practically every Rue user would prefer it over everything else, not just for one-handed solving, but also two-handed. So I believe in that sense the potential for this has gone up quite a lot. My previous prototype, which was mostly just a proof of concept, had a fairly big gap between that one and like a finished product. With this one, the gap has closed quite a lot, so much that I believe that a manufacturer should be able to easily bridge the last step, so to speak, because a lot of the issues with it is very much related to the 3D printed pieces and their weight and such. I weighed some of the parts of Moyu V10 and such, what I got was that the 2x2 core of this is about 33 grams, while the rest, the 3D printed parts, are about 78. So if you were to replace those, the outer parts, with the Moyu part, you would get the cube at around about 80 to 90 grams, which is very reasonable. It's in line with the Moyu RS3M Super, for example. But I believe now that the next step, so to speak, is very much the for proper cube manufacturers to pick this up and try to make something here. My strategy has been largely to try to garner interest and ideas and try to explore this, and part of this is to be able to show that there is interest for this, that there is a big market. Another part is also to do a lot of the help with the risk analysis here, and to show that it is very much possible to make a proper speed cube with this mechanism, and the risk of putting in the hours of designing this and only to get to result in nothing that is good enough is, I believe, very slim. So all in all, I am very excited for this now. I think the potential is much higher than I previously was thinking about it. Now to disassemble this and look at it. If we take off the center cap, we will see inside the GAN 251. So if we go inside here and take off the spring holder here, and then if we can pull off the entire top layer. So this is how the inside looks. Here we have the outer edges. So this is part of the issue with the stability. There's no real torpedoes and such, but I will talk about an idea here that I think might be able to improve this. Now we can see here as well that I made sure to have some air between the inner and the inner 2x2 and the outer shell. But the GAN 251 is obviously not made for this, so the margin have been very slim. The outer 3x3 is 56 millimeters. By the way, it is not bigger than that, so it is very much possible to create a properly sized 3x3. But in many ways, the GAN 251 was very suitable for this, because the edges, the corner to edge magnets were located inside, so to speak, rather than between the outer corners, which allowed me to get this effect, the better stability of the core, and not really have to sacrifice any performance and such by cutting down on the corners. So here is overall how the corners look like. We have the inner tracks and then, so to speak, outer tracks here. And here you can see how I have cut down the corners and then glued on the 3D printed corners. And they which go in here about like this. Now, in order to try to reduce friction, the tolerances and such is quite big. There's a bit of wiggle room, which I would try to avoid, which obviously would be easy to avoid in a mass-produced cube. The cube has a spherical design, spherical cuts, which is not completely ideal, and I will try to see if I can make something that with more conical or cylindrical cuts. But overall, it works very well. I will be making a build guide for this, so others can recreate this. And I really hope to see others take a shot at this design and try to make something that is even better, so to speak. There are some things I want to try. For example, make it 56 millimeters, and as you can see here, I've had to sand down the parts a bit, which I would preferably just 3D print from the start. So something I want to try, if we look at the inner and outer corners here, they sit about like this, and you only want them to move in this direction here, but they can also twist a bit, an issue that happens a bit and causes some lockups. So my idea here is to try to add some form of tracks. So if you look at my illustrations here, very finely made. This is sort of the direction that we are looking at here, and here's the inner corner. So on our left here we have, well, this design, so nothing between, just air. And my idea, what I want to try, is to try to add some form of track that would help aligning the outer edges with the inner edges and basically create some form of connection there. Not that they would be touching, but something that would be touching a slight bit when corner cutting and such. Perhaps you could add in some hooks to add even more stability, but I highly doubt that would work. I'm not fully certain that even this level would work that well, but it is something I want to try for a second version. But because I believe this is so good, this is very much like a lot of the issues is just related to the inherent problems of doing 3D printed parts, I will probably not be working as hard to make a second version for that reason, but rather I will see what I can do in terms of getting cube manufacturers to notice this, see what I can upload and such to Chinese forums and whatnot. So that's kind of my plan moving forward. Now, I've had a few people bring up the question of WCA legality, whether or not this would be allowed or not, and I very much believe it should be. The design is similar to that of GAN 5x5 actually. So on the GAN 5x5, it is like, if you've seen pictures, the April Fools and such, it's kind of a 3x3 that has been extended and then the gaps filled in, similar for the Rubik's 5x5. So, and this is in many ways the same kind of mechanism here. So if this were to be legal, the GAN 5x5 would also be legal. What a lot of people has brought up is this line in regulations saying something about that you're not allowed to change the concept of the cube, so to speak. But I believe that rule is mainly to prevent people from handing in like a void cube for 3x3, which doesn't have centers, something that is mathematically a different type of puzzle than a standard 3x3. But this is on that level a standard 3x3. It has the 8 corners, the 12 edges, and the 6 centers, and so on. So at last, and kind of as the ending remarks here, I would like to just bring up the question of, what can we do with this? And to not be too stuck in what we are currently doing. So the current methods that we use, even the current forms of Rue and such, are, I believe, largely a reflection of current hardware. So if this were to become a thing, I think it is important to look at it that, okay, well then we should try to look for new techniques, methods, algorithms that make use of this free moving slice feature and whatnot, so that we can use it to our advantage, and instead of looking at this cube from the perspective of what we are currently doing, because this cube is the result of wanting to really push limits and wanting to and having a vision of something that would be fantastic. And I think it is important to consider this in the method department as well, to look at what is possible and what can we do, and really try to push the limit. And with that, thanks for watching, and don't be afraid to share this to others and whatnot. That way it would increase the likelihood of this cube being noticed and picked up by proper cube manufacturers in the future. I have also made a Discord server for this project to try to get more people, everyone interested in this, more connected, and so we can work on various ideas and try to improve this even further. And once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.